back-to-back audio shows. Rocky Mountain Audio Fest in beautiful Denver, Colorado, and the Audio Engineering Society show, AES, in New York this week. I was there Wednesday and Thursday this week, and the contrast between those two shows is remarkable. Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, high-end audio show, audiophile-oriented show, has CanJam within that show, the Head-Fi show for headphones. Huge fan of Rocky Mountain Audio Fest. Sound quality at shows is always going to be variable, right? The hotel rooms suck, blah, blah, blah. But there was a lot of good sound. I go to the Audio Engineering Society show in the Javits Center in New York City, which doesn't have a lot of sound, a lot of sound rooms and stuff, but there's some, it's a big convention center, and the sound on the show floor was understandably pretty unimpressive, but they had, rooms along in the lower levels, and I went to, and I heard universally awful sound. But you know what? I always have, and it's this paradox to me that these people, the audio engineers that go to the audio engineering show, they wake up every day. They want to make great sounding recordings. I assume they do their best within the, what their clients want, etc., etc. But it's always a paradox, because why does so much recorded music, especially contemporary recorded music, sound so bad? I don't know. I ran into one of my old recording engineer friends there, and I asked him, why is that? He says, yeah, it's always that way. It's distorted. It's massively compressed pop music. When they're trying to show off like a speaker company, to name one, Adam Audio, great German speaker company. I like the sound of their speakers generally, but when I hear them at this show, they play the worst sounding recordings. Just, dreadful, drive you out of the room, wretched, really loud, really distorted, and massively compressed. It's so weird. But the good part of the show, for me, the reason I keep going year after year is because I have no expectations I'm going to hear something good, is they have seminars and panel discussions and everything, and those are really fantastic. So the first one I went to that was, I went to one about the history of Columbia Records' 30th Street recording studio in New York City, and pretty much everybody that recorded for Columbia in the 50s, 60s, 70s recorded there. Bob Dylan, Miles Davis, everybody who was on Columbia recorded there, and it was a great sounding room. Unfortunately, I was never there in person. That was a great seminar. But then the one I went to the other day was for Al Schmidt, the recording engineer. He's won like 23 Grammys for engineering. Incredible. He's recorded Bob Dylan, he's recorded Dr. Dre, he's recorded Barbra Streisand. I mean, everybody. Neil Young. Everybody has used Al Schmidt. And I never met him before, I never heard him speak before, but he's a very, very personable guy, great stories. But the thing it was kind of a schmoozy talk. There wasn't a lot of technical stuff. But one thing he said that really stuck with me was when it comes to microphones, and being a great engineer, you have to be great with microphones. And he said at one point during this talk, he never uses equalization in his recordings. He said, why would I use equalization? I'll just use the right mic that gets the sound I want, and then I won't have to EQ it. It's like, yeah, isn't that? It's just so obvious and direct, but it takes somebody of his stature to know that. And, I'm sorry to cast aspersions on the younger generation, but a lot of the younger generation wants to use boxes and processors and tweaks to make records sound the way they want them to sound. This guy, he's like, no, you just use the right microphone. Get the right microphone, you put it in front of the singer, you put it in front of the guitars, in front of the drum kits, and you get the sound you want. Wow, what a novel idea. And then he wins 23 Grammys. So there you go, a little lesson for you aspiring recording engineers. Know what the hell you're doing. Actually, seriously, work as an apprentice or an intern for people who know what they're doing. Anyway, so that was a really great one. And then there was one with Bob Ludwig, who's a mastering engineer. Again, he's mastered everybody. He gave a great talk. Also short on technical stuff. I wanted a little more. But he did Radiohead. He did the Led Zeppelin 2, which is kind of how he got famous initially, was his mastering of the Led Zeppelin 2 LP when it came out in 1968. And that sort of put him on the map. But he did Dylan, he did Springsteen, he does, again, everybody. He told a funny story about Bruce Springsteen, that Springsteen's Nebraska album, It's No Secret, was recorded on cassette. And when he went to master it, he wanted to use a Nakamichi cassette machine so he could easily fine-tune the azimuth for each part of, each song. And Springsteen said, no, don't do that. I don't want the azimuth to be perfect. I don't want those high frequencies to show up. Let them go. And he was like, really? I said, yeah. And he also said that the machine that Nebraska was recorded on was running fast, so that when you played it back on a cassette machine that was correct, it would be slow. and he said to Springsteen, let's get the speed correct so you're on pitch. And Springsteen said, no, just leave it as it is. And then when it was remastered again, he said to Springsteen, can we fix it? And he said, no, just leave it alone. And he did. So Ludwig left it alone and mastered it the way his client, Bruce Springsteen, wanted it to sound. Wrong, but right to Springsteen, because that's the way he heard it. He didn't want it fixed. He wanted it to sound the way he, Springsteen, wanted it to sound. So the other great thing about the contrast between these two shows, Rocky Mountain Audio Fest and the AES show, is the age, right? So most of the people that go to Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, I'd say 2/3 of them are over 50, right? And it's almost, I would say it's probably 90% male. But you go to AES, and it's the reverse. I would say 1/3 of people there were over 50, and a lot of them were really young, like in their early 20s. So that was really refreshing. And these seminars given by old people like Bob Ludwig and Al Schmidt, the audience in there, and it was in big rooms that held a few hundred people, were all mostly young people. Well, that was refreshing and unexpected that they would be interested in what this old guy had to say. These old guys had to say, but they were there. And it also, the show, the AES show in New York, has great energy, possibly because there's so many young people. And in the exhibits, lots and lots and lots of microphones. It's like the only predominantly analog part of audio engineering is still microphones. They haven't figured out a way of capturing vocals and instantly digitizing them, but keeping them digital all the way through. Eventually, I'm sure they'll figure out a way. But for now, lots and lots of microphones, Neumann microphones, all kinds of microphones. So, again, the difference between the two shows, though, is and always will be, unfortunately, the audiophile show, despite its weaknesses, the Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, has vastly better sound than the Pro Sound show. The Pro Sound show is louder, brighter, bassier. I mean, it's not subtle, not the tiniest bit subtle. Maybe they play it loud because they're all going deaf because they play music too loud all the freaking time. So I'm going to do a micro review because I just got it the other day, but I'm really impressed. Now, I am not an REM fan, but I got this REM box, REM at the BBC Live, and you know what? I like it. I like REM live. I mean, this isn't the first time I've heard a live REM recording, but this is a whole 6 or 7 or 8 CD set of various live recordings that REM did in England, and I like it. I think their production on their records, there's something about it over the years that gets in the way for me. I don't like the sound of their studio recordings, but their live recordings are good. I'll have more to say about this soon, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.